This man waited for 38 years. Most of us couldn't even wait 38 days. Taking a couple breaks here and there, but this will be the last part of the deep dive series, the kind of short series that I did, looking at the Bible from an in-depth lens. But lastly, we're going to be looking at the topic of faith, which I believe I've discussed already, but we're going to be looking at John chapter 5, specifically verses 6 to 8. Verse 6 says, "When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he saith unto him, Wilt thou be made whole?" Verse 7, "The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another step down before me." Verse 8, "Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk." For reference, this is a man who had been sick. In verse 5, it says, "A certain man was there which had an infirmity for 38 years." For 38 years he had been sick, and basically there was this pool where at a certain point in time, verse 4 says, "An angel would come down at a certain season into the pool and trouble the water, and whoever then first got into the troubled water was made whole of whatsoever disease he had." So this man had a disease for 38 years, and he was never able to be the first one to receive that healing from an angel. Now, the biggest aspect of faith that we're looking at is when the man says, "I have no one when the water is troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steppeth down before me." And how this relates to us is a lot of times we think, when we are asked about our situations, like, "Oh, I don't have this," or "I need this," or "I can't get this done. That's why this hasn't happened for me." But one of the biggest parts of faith is ignoring your limits and realizing that God has no limits. The Bible, in so many ways proves that God makes the impossible possible through his miracles that Jesus did all throughout his time on earth. And even before, Jesus was revealed in the Bible, God is constantly proving himself to do the impossible. The things that we think are impossible, he makes them possible. So one thing about faith, he realized, it says, Jesus asked, "Wilt thou be made whole?" It's really just a question of, do we want to be healed? Do we want to receive this blessing? What we're believing God for, do we want it? The answer is yes. What we simply have to do is wait in patience and in faith. And now the hardest part about that is the patience aspect. It's easy to say, "Oh, I believe God's going to do this for me." But when it comes to a certain time, it's like, okay, it's been like 3 months. Like, when is this going to happen? This man waited for 38 years. Most of us couldn't even wait 38 days. And I'm going to be honest, I probably couldn't either. But the biggest part about it all is waiting in patience and in faith and knowing that God will turn your impossible situation to something possible as long as you let him and hand it to him. Overall, what matters most is that we're waiting on God patiently and in faith, no matter how long it may take. As always, I love you and Jesus loves you more.